So you'll notice something amazing in this week's Parsha, which is the Parsha all about the spies, and I'd like to share with you a couple of Yisoides here, including a couple of things about making Aliyah. I think a lot of people in here, if you're understanding my English, you were not born here, and you've moved to this place. And so the few things that are important to understand from this week's Sedra is, one of them that's amazing, is that the spies, when they came, they were coming to check it out if they can. And the two, if you can call them good spies, Kaleb ben Yefune and Yeshua ben Nun, they weren't coming to see if we can. They were coming to see just how. It was a how mission. How are we going to pull this off? It wasn't a question of, are we going to be able to pull this off? We weren't coming to see if we can make it here in Israel. So many people make Aliyah, and they'll even say to me sometimes, they say, yeah, we're giving Aliyah a try. Now, anyone who's made Aliyah knows how that's going to end. Not well. Yeah. Aliyah isn't something you try. You try ice cream flavors and stuff. But, with an ice cream flavor, if you don't like it, you can spit it out. Here, the opposite happens. It spits you out if you try to move to Israel. The way you come to Israel is you come as a function of commitment. It's a hashkafic move. It is and those reconnaissance missions that people, it's only responsible if you're moving your whole family here that you fly in and you check out Beit Shemesh first, of course, and you check out, your professional options, parnasa and stuff. Nothing wrong with checking that out. You got to lay the groundwork. It's basic ishtadlus, not a big deal. But you're not coming to see if. You're just coming to see how. And then when you move here, then it's just a question of how you're going to make it here. It's not a question of if you're going to make it here. And then when you're here, what you get is siyata d'shmaya. Because siyata d'shmaya is a function of commitment. When you're committed to something, there you get the siyata d'shmaya. I get calls all the time about about work I do, and for example, my seminars, they're not necessarily cheap unless you're, of course, a Manhattan businessman, then you consider it the cheapest seminar you've ever been to. But if you're a yeshiva avrech, a kollel avrech, then it seems quite expensive. I always tell the guy, let's talk about your commitment first, because if you have the commitment, you'll have the siyata d'shmaya. Commitment and siyata d'shmaya go together. When you see someone's not so committed to something, they're still they're like the type of people who check the pool with their foot first. That's not me. I just jump in. I check with my whole body. I check how cold the pool is by first jumping in, and then we see how cold it is. I'm just fully committed. I'm in. It might come from a big wave riding background. My background's in big wave riding. I'm sure you meet a lot of surfers, but not everyone's in big wave riding. In big wave riding, can you imagine you're paddling into a wave that's 30 feet high, and you're paddling as hard as you can because it literally takes everything you've got to get the momentum together to get into a 30-foot wave. Can you suddenly change your mind about that wave, like towards the last second? What happens if you suddenly decide, you know what? Nah, not interested in that wave. What's going to happen? You're going in. You're going in whether you like it or not, and it's better going in on your feet, standing on the board, than going in, squeezing your surfboard and hugging it like, an ironing board and getting tossed 30 feet over the falls. Life is like that. The siyata d'shmaya comes from fully committing to something. When you're in, that's where you see the divine assistance. And that's just a gift for life. I'd like to share with you on that subject, just an insight, and this is from the possible you, that's just, I think will be powerful for all of us. Just because I'm on the subject, I want to hop it, and then we'll move on. Whenever you make a decision, you're not committed yet. It's just a decision. It comes from the word decide, and decide comes from the root side, which means to eliminate, like pesticide eliminates something. So side means to eliminate, and what happens is you move through all the other options. When you come up with enough reasons for one option, you've eliminated the rest, you now make a decision. So for example, getting married, you might have different options, and the person who had the most reasons to marry, you married that person. It's based based on reasons. Decisions are based on reasons. But the problem is so many people stay in decision mode. And they get stuck in decision mode, which means when you're in decision mode, you think you made a commitment, you didn't. You're still in decision mode. How do you know? Because when new reasons come up for jumping ship and doing something else, or the reasons why you decided on the first thing are gone, as anyone who's my age probably realizes that the reasons you married your spouse are long gone. Hopefully you have new reasons, but the reasons you married them in the first place are probably like history. And so if you're a reason-based person, so then what happens is you can easily shut down in your relationship. You shut down your relationship because you've been given reasons why to be upset. I'll go into details once we get into the meat of the shir. When you make a decision, I understand it's always going to be based on reasons. For the same, in the analogy of the wave catching, I don't just pull into any wave. If it's a 25-foot wave, I make a very serious decision, and I eliminate probably 9 out of 10 waves that are eliminated, not going on those waves. But when I finally see a wave hit the reef at the right angle, and it's my turn, because there's a bit of a pecking order in surfing, and it's my turn, and I've eliminated all the other waves, and this wave's the one I'm choosing. So then I go in fully committed no matter what. I'm going for it. And sometimes the wave shifts and it hits the angle wrong all of a sudden. That doesn't matter. I'm going in on my feet because I have a much better chance standing on the board than squeezing it with my legs and my arms wrapped around it. When we are in that decision mode, as soon as you make a decision, you move it to a whole other area, which is called commitment. That's where the siyata d'shmaya is. You move from decision mode into commitment mode. And in commitment, you get the siyata d'shmaya. There's no more reasons. It doesn't matter what your spouse said or your kids said or what anyone says. It's where you can just stay strong and committed. I can have a kid acting up. I can have a spouse acting up. I can have a kid acting up. And I could easily get sucked into it. Don't we all get sucked into every kind of interaction with family members? But that's decision mode, which means they've given you reasons not to be able to stand your ground and stick, stay in your own, space. They've given you reason to pull you out of your zone. When we move to the commitment mode, so now there's no more reasons that stop me. My kid can do whatever. My wife can do whatever. My parents can do whatever. How many of us have parents that turn you into a little boy or a little girl in 1 second? 1 second. It doesn't matter how old you are. You become like a little child in 1 second. All they have to do is ask you anything. It doesn't matter. They have their things they ask you about. And you are instantly transformed into a 9-year-old. Now, how long do you spend on the phone with someone who makes you feel like you're 9? The answer is you get off as quickly as possible. And you always start the conversation off with something like, oh gosh, it's really bad timing. And then you have to come up with some reason why it's really bad timing. And of course they catch you at the best time, and it's always bad timing. Are we in decision mode or are we in commitment mode? Which one? What mode is that? That's decision mode, and they gave you reasons why to pull out. And when we go into commitment mode, it is amazing, where there's no more reasons. I'm just committed to my father. He can say whatever he wants. I'm not a 9-year-old. He can just say his piece. I'm committed to my mother. She can say whatever she needs to say. My wife can say what she needs to say. My kids can say what they need to say. Everyone can say what they need to say. Criticism of my classes. Sometimes someone comes up and nails me to the wall after a class. And, I could easily fall into that one too. No, I just listen very carefully and I ignore them. Just kidding. It's just being committed. When you're committed, you're in a nice position, a good place. So I'd like to talk a little more about that, but first I want to share with you an amazing Rashi in the Parsha. So it says, Moshe Rabbeinu sends them, and he asks, what's the land like? So it sounds like he's talking about the land. Is it good? Is it bad? How are the cities? After that, he asks them about the people. He asks, are these people strong people. Ve'es ha'am ha'yoshev alea ha'chazak hu ha'rofe ha'ma'at hu imrav. Are the people strong people or are they weak people? That's the people. But then it goes about, it wants to talk about the actual cities. So it says, and what's the land itself? Uma ha'aretz asher hu yoshev ba. Ha'toiva hi imrav. Uma ha'arim. What are the cities like? Asher hu yoshev behena. What are the cities like that they're dwelling in? Ha'bemachanim. Are they in camps? Im b'mivtzarim. Are they in walled, fortified cities? Okay. So you got a question about the people, got a question about the cities. Rashi comes and says something very deeply psychological and especially important for tonight's shir. When he asked if the people are strong or weak, Rashi says, Siman masar lehem. He gave him a siman. Im bifrozim yoshvim. Chazakim him. If they're out and camped along, out on the land without major fortification, what kind of people are those? Strong people. Shesoimchim al giburosam. They're somech on their own strength. Ve'im ba'arim b'tzurois hem. And if they're in fortified cities, hem yoshvim, sorry, chaloshim hem. They're weak people. Amazing insight by Rashi. That from now on in your life, as long as you see someone being chill, someone's relaxed, someone's being naim, someone's being easy to deal with, how are they feeling, strong or weak? They're feeling strong. It's amazing. When you're feeling strong, you can be chill, you can be relaxed. When you see someone being strong, though, when you see someone being aggressive, when you see someone being defensive, so there's something weak going on inside. And this is their move. This is a person making a move right now. And you get to sit and watch, because this is a class, what we're discussing now is understanding our spouses, ourselves, understanding others. It's amazing right here in this week's Sedra. It's talking already about how to understand people. It's just how do you understand people? And based on people's behaviors, they're telling you volumes about how they're feeling. The stronger you see someone being, the more defensive, the more aggressive, or even the more offensive, the weaker they're feeling. Most people, when they see someone being aggressive like that, being defensive, they fall right into it. And they go into decision mode, which means now they have reasons to fall into those types of interactions. And the thing can it can go out of control. The relationship becomes like a volcano, and the house can turn into a maelstrom of war. Whereas when you see a kid or a spouse or anyone who's getting defensive or is behaving in some way that's strong, so you automatically know that person's feeling weak. How am I going to interact with that person? So I always come from commitment. You're coming from commitment. I'm committed to this relationship, and I'm committed to being in my role, which may be father, husband, or son, or it might be mother, wife, or daughter. And I'm committed to that relationship. I'm in. And I'm in playing my role as that part of the relationship. And as soon as people start dealing with me in a way that's clearly is a sign that they're building fortress right now. They're in fortress mode. Back off, relax. Let it be. Just relax and be strong. But strong on the inside means to be not strong on the outside. That you yourself can be strong and you can let it go. Now, I see a lot of married people in the crowd, so I would like to speak about understanding our spouses. What I'm going to say is going to be a little controversial. I apologize to both the women and the men. This is not going to feel good for anybody. You may not like me anymore, but I'm a rabbi. Okay, so rabbis have a specific job. Have you guys ever read the description of a rabbi? You ever read it? It's to comfort the afflicted and I'm pretty good at that. I've had to deal with a lot of pain in people. Comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. Okay? And that's what we're about to be doing. So I hope you enjoyed the first part of this year. I don't care if you like me. Who I want you to like is your spouse. So I'm going to take a little fall for your shalom bayis. Okay, this is going to be self-sacrifice. When a person is feeling insecure, it's like, in an analogy, it'd be like going down a river, like you fell into like a raging river, and it's heading straight towards Niagara Falls. And if you're floating down a river and you're getting tossed asunder, and it's heading towards this major waterfall, you are looking for something solid. Immediately, you're just looking for any tree branch hanging over the river. You're looking for a rock to hold on to. You're looking for anything you can find that's solid in a world of fluidity. You just want something solid. Now, it turns out that we have very strange ways of looking for something solid. But I think it's important to notice the way we look for something solid, and for us in our marriages to know when our spouse is looking for something solid. The way it works is that when a woman is feeling insecure, which is, natural, it's going to happen no matter what. Men feel insecure sometimes, women feel insecure sometimes. This is not something that anyone can avoid. Everyone's going to feel it. Doesn't matter how strong you are. Doesn't matter how confident you are. There are times we all feel insecure, myself included. What happens is when a woman feels insecure and she's looking for something solid, what she does naturally is she tests her husband for that solidity. She tests her husband to see if he's going to be that pillar in the middle of the river that she can grab onto so she doesn't get, swept down. And now, obviously, the smart way to do that would be to say to one's husband, honey, I'm feeling a little insecure right now. Do you mind, giving me a little extra support? Yeah, that would be the smart way to do it. But women do something completely different. Okay, something completely different. What they do is something that happens happens in the animal kingdom, but it also happens in the kingdom of humans as well. And that is, in the animal kingdom, it's called fitness testing. Okay, it's called fitness testing. And what they do is they just test their man with a little bit of an attack, sometimes a bigger attack, a smaller attack. Depends what the man was, depends how late he was. But what they do is they go for an attack. And what happens is the man then is well, unfortunately, most men don't understand what's going on right then. They're just like, what's going on? Why am I getting attacked? So what men do when they're being attacked is sorry to say this to the men, but what happens is every man has a little boy inside of him. A little boy, precious child in there. And that's not who she's looking for right now. But that's who she's going to find, okay? The little boy is what she's going to get. And if you notice with little boys is when they're being attacked, is they run, which in an adult form, that would be like mincha. For it's like the 3-hour version of mincha. Really long mincha. He heads out for the mincha, of the century. And if he's already done mincha, then he's always got the bathroom option. Okay? And he heads off to the bathroom. He has to go to the bathroom. Yeah, of course, you tell him you don't need to bring the whole library in there with you, But he heads off to the bathroom. If he's got a smartphone, you might as well just see him tomorrow. And he's gone. And so, anyway, that's called flight. That's called flight. So let's watch how this worked here. She was feeling a little insecure. She goes for the attack. Yeah, he turns into a little boy, because every man has a little boy in there. And he goes little boy and runs away. Now, how's she feeling? Secure. Now it was insecure. And now her man just failed a fitness test. And she's going down the river now. More secure or less secure than before? much less, much less. And it can be a pretty frightening feeling for a woman. And but it gets worse, because what happens is when a woman has determined that there's not going to be a man present for this day. So what happens is it becomes a loss of respect. Woman will lack respect for her man, and it goes like this. It's a chain of events. It goes insecurity, then loss of respect, and then it's loss of attraction. It goes in that order: insecurity, loss of respect, and then loss of attraction. Because attraction and respect go together. They go together. Lots of respect, lots of attraction. Less respect, loss of attraction. Just the nature of the beast, the way it goes. And so, and it's very important that we all understand this. We have to understand this system, the way it works. God created us this way. And if you think as a woman, well, you're going to be on top of this, and you're never going to fitness test your husband, rather you're going to go up to him and say, honey, I'm feeling a little insecure. Can you just hold me? Or something like that. You're not going to do that. You're going to fitness test your husband. What is in your control is maybe how much you fitness test him, how badly you go after him to see if, what he's got. Now, for the men, in this particular, let's talk about the worst situation. That was flight. The other is you attack, little boy gets scared, and he's already davened mincha, and he's gone to the bathroom. Now, flight has no option anymore. You've backed the cat against the wall. And when a cat's in the corner, doesn't matter how little it is, what's it going to do? It's going to claw. And what happens then is the man will make his wife wrong about whatever it is she attacked him for, which she may be wrong, but it's irrelevant who's right and wrong here. It just doesn't matter. But what he's going to do, he's going to make you wrong. And if your husband studies Talmud, you will lose this argument. You're just going to lose, because they spend hours and hours doing this all day long. They're so well practiced in how to make someone wrong. I mean, we make our chavrusas so wrong, sometimes ridiculously, when deep down we know we're wrong, but we've already dug in our heels. So we're going to make him wrong and bring like 5 rayas why he's wrong. Now, he goes into fight mode. So if a woman was feeling insecure and now has fitness tested her husband with a little attack, and the husband now goes into fight mode, it's beyond bad. It's like you can't peel her off the floor with a spatula from such an experience. For us men, whenever this is going on, whenever that's happening, our job is to immediately catch it. You got to catch it right away. Right away. The second you're getting attacked, you just stop, take a deep breath, and then take another deep breath. Take a third deep breath, a fourth deep breath, and just till she's finished speaking, you don't stop breathing. Do not interrupt. Just don't say a word. Just do not interrupt. Doesn't matter what kind of crazy point she has. She even starts bringing out your parents and stuff. Which means she obviously wasn't paying attention in her Kala classes. Because raise your hand if they mention in your chassan class, your Kala classes, do not ever mention stuff about your in-laws. Just me? Really? None of you guys? Blessed that Rav Dolgan. It was amazing. He brought, as part of my chassan shmuz, you never say the D word, and you never say the D word no matter how bad the fight is, and you never mention your in-laws. So, anyway, for us men, it's to breathe and listen. When she's finished speaking, then your job is to reiterate what she said, to show that you were listening, and reiterate what she said, and you're basically done. You're basically done. She's going to feel great, and it's really going to be amazing. So I think I'm done with this point. The only issue would be discussing what to do with men when they're feeling insecure. But women are really good at that. which is thank God for our wives, because our wives are actually good at that when we're feeling insecure. So our wives build us up, which is amazing. The only problem is when you're both feeling insecure at the same time. That's always rough. But hopefully the timing is good, and if you're feeling insecure, they're feeling good. If they're feeling insecure, you're feeling good. And but when men are feeling insecure, there's nothing like a woman to rebuild you and send you back out to the front lines. It happened that my wife fitness tested me one morning, and just to illustrate a story, but it was like more intense than usual. And I was on my way out. I was just going to the mikveh, and it was like for top of the morning. Like, I was just going to the mikveh. Like, all I want to do is get in that hot water. And she stops me at the door. She's like, "Honey, can you sit down for a moment?" And I was like, "Uh-oh." And I sit down, and she's really letting me have it. Really let me have it. And she was right about all of it, but she's just going and going and going. And I'm just like, it's like Rocky, and I'm just, and wait a second, no, this was after the mikveh. I was just going to pick up my tefillin. Yeah, because I live next door. No, I toiveled. I was coming to get my tefillin. I grabbed my tefillin, and then she stopped me on the way out. So I remember, because I was just like, I know exactly when Pesukah de Zimra is happening in shul. So I was like, I'm just like hearing like, now it's Baruch Shamar, and now it's like Baruch Hu, and I'm still sitting there holding my tefillin bag, just going like, and I deserved it. I mean, it was all like within the realm of reason. I didn't interrupt, even when I thought it wasn't in the realm of reason. Anyway, but it was really intense. And I finished. I go home. I go to shul. Home. I go to shul, and I daven, and I come back. When I came back from shul, I admit, I just wanted to put my tefillin where they belong and run. Yeah, so I like opened the door as quietly as I could, and I start like tiptoeing into the house. She's standing right in the doorway, and I'm just like, uh-oh. And she's like, "Honey, would you like an orange juice?" I'm like, "Orange juice?" She's like, "Freshly squeezed." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "How about a Spanish omelet?" I'm like, "You're going to make me a Spanish omelet?" And I'm like, "All right." And then I'm eating a Spanish omelet, drinking my freshly squeezed orange, and she's just sitting on the side of the table smiling at me. I'm like, this stuff works. This stuff works. Every one of us is living inside our own movie of our life. It's the movie of our life. I want you to imagine that someone calls you from Hollywood, head of Sony Pictures calls you, and he's got your name, and you're like, "Yes, can I help you?" And he's like, "Hi, this is Jason Blumenthal of Sony Pictures," and that's the head of Sony Pictures. I know because he was my best friend in high school. And we've been studying different lives of people in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and I don't know, there's just something about you that we decided to make a movie about your life. And you're like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Well, you want to give me your address because we'd like to FedEx you a contract. I mean, you're going to be fabulously wealthy. You can finally build those shuls that Ramat Beit Shemesh was waiting for. You're going to be a millionaire or a millionairess. Can we FedEx you the contract?" And like, "Before you do, can you just tell me what the movie's about? I never thought my life was that interesting." And so what he does is he goes into the story of your childhood and a couple of kind of difficult moments that took place then, where you're kind of wondering, how do you know about that? Whether it was not getting picked for the play or not getting picked for the team, or maybe you were walking in the market and you put your hand up to hold some lady's hand, and you looked up in horror to see it was some other lady, and you're like, "Ah!" And of course, your mom was like 2 rows over already, like checking hectures, and or you're waiting at that. Your dad left you in shul. He got busy, drove off, and like got home, and your mom's like, "Where's Elmo?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll be right back." Goes flying back to the park or back to the shul, or being or waiting outside your school for your mom to come pick you up, and whatever happened, happened. But you just waited and waited. All the kids got picked up, and you're just like waiting there. Anyway, so the guy in Hollywood's telling you about this story, or whatever your story was. All of us have stories. You know, it could be your. I had someone who was he had 2 older sisters and 2 younger sisters. In other words, no allies, 0 allies. You know, nowhere to, and a busy father. You know, that's a tough scenario. Anyway, but whatever our story was, he tells you your story. You all have your own story. So he tells you the story, and you're like, yeah, then what? And you're like, no, this is the best part, is you grew up, and now you're an adult, and you're still playing out the same story in all your adult interactions with your spouse and with your kids and with all your neighbors and your friends. Like, the same drama just keeps coming up over and over and over again. You're like in this amazing rerun of your childhood. At which point you say on the phone, like, please don't send the contract. You know, and he's like, no, this is amazing. Everyone wants to watch this stuff. I mean, what is every movie made of? I mean, think about it. Every single show, every movie. It starts the first 5 minutes. You know, they got the exact right music. Something goes wrong in every scene. You know, right at the beginning of the movie, something goes wrong for the character. First, they make you fall in love with the character because they give you all the best angles with the cameras, and they play the violins, and you love this kid. I mean, you're in love with the kid on that movie. First, they fall in love with the kid in the movie, and then something goes wrong, and then they play the right music, and then you're crying, and you look over the person next to you hoping they don't realize you're crying, and of course they're crying too, and everyone in the theater's crying. And why would you sit there for another 2 hours, says the producer to you. Why do you sit there for another 2 hours? Why? Movie houses all over the world, you sit there for another 2 hours. Why are you sitting there? You know what's going to happen in this movie. They're going to play out the same story in all their interactions, all their relationships as an adult. Why are you going to sit there for that? 2 more hours. Why would you sit there? Or why would you show up every week to watch the sitcom every week? What are you going to do that for? And the answer is because you want to see a breakthrough. You want them to break through it. Everyone's going to watch it because they want to see you finally break through your story, to break out of your little story. That's what they all want to see. Because everyone's living in their story, and everyone's doing reruns in their adult lives based on that story. We're all in a rerun in all our interactions. There's both sizes, big ones and little ones. We've got lots of stories. At this point in my life, I've counted. I mean, I'm somewhere between 25 and 30 major stories. And just now, I ran a seminar in Mexico. I had no idea this was going to happen, but I had a huge breakthrough, like a giant pop, like my popcorn kernel just popped with a whole new story that I didn't even realize that I had. It's just incredible breakthrough for me. So I've counted like 25 major stories, and you have to realize you're listening to someone who is bubble wrapped. Okay, there wasn't a pedophile for like 5 zip codes from my house. There was never even a crime. You didn't have to watch your kids. You didn't have to lock your doors. Nothing ever happened there. We were bubble wrapped. And I've counted from my bubble wrapped upbringing, from 2 loving parents who were married to each other with tons of love poured into us. I have counted in my life about 25 major breakthrough loops I was caught up in that were playing out in all my life. This one in Mexico was something about my professional life, like how I'm interacting professionally. It was a huge breakthrough. I cried my eyes out, like all the ones that have affected my personal life, my marriage, my parenting. We're all in these stories. We're living inside stories. And in that story, there is no possibility. It's a loop you get stuck in, and all your interactions get very, very predictable. All of those interactions are so predictable. You know where you're going with this. They know where you're going with this. Everybody knows where this is going when you're in your story. I want to broaden our definition of responsibility. When we were raised, responsibility was cleaning up your room, brushing your teeth, eating all the carrots and peas on your plate. When you grew up, those were basic understandings of responsibility. It broadened. There became more responsibility as we got older. And then, of course, as adults, we're expected to take responsibility fiscally, financially, for ourselves, for our families. But if you have done all that, you brushed your teeth, you take care of your body, you eat your meals, you're paying your bills, every father in the world would say, nachas, nachas. My child is taking responsibility. But then there's further responsibilities. Responsibility for Torah. Responsibility for right and wrong. Responsibility for others. Children. All of this is just the ever-broadening responsibility, but what I'd like to do is broaden it further. Ready for this? Responsibility for your stories. What about taking responsibility for your story? To the point where you can actually, here's the loop of your story, which is so predictable in all your interactions, that you can actually step out of the loop, look at yourself in your story, and suddenly take responsibility for it, and be in a much more powerful place, which I would be calling responsibility. Like taking actual responsibility consciously for your stories. I mean, this is a new a new record in responsibility taking, but wow, what a difference life is. What a difference your life is when you're taking responsibilities in your stories. Can we always do that? No, but we can do it most of the time. Just stop, look around, and catch yourself. And also, a lot of our stories, you can predict them a mile away. So you have chance, you have time. You have time. I have my, everyone has their parent story. So I have my father's story, where I'm the 9-year-old little boy. But I've got till I get to LA, I've got a 14-hour flight, 15-hour flight. It's plenty of time to make sure that my precious time with my father is story-free. I'm not going into my stories. I got precious time on this earth with my father, who's an aging man. I don't have time for that. As they say in America, ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah, no one's got time for that. My father doesn't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And so I have 14 hours to prepare myself. The last flight was 15 hours. But you want to know what happened? He surprised me at Ben Gurion Airport once. I was picking up my mom. She was coming in for a baby naming for a kiddush. He wasn't supposed to be coming. He was too busy to come, but it was all a trick. He was actually coming the whole time. And I turn around in the airport. I hear my name. I turn around. It's my father. Boom. 9 years old. I become like a little 9-year-old. My low back just goes like, because can a 9-year-old support a big family? Nope. So my back immediately went out while I was hugging him. My low back goes out. While I was hugging him. I could barely get his suitcase into my van. I get to Yerushalayim. He's like, we're coming to my door. He's like, I want to surprise your wife too, and the kids, And I'm like, all right, no problem. So I go into the house, and my wife looks at my face, and she's like, what happened to you? I'm like, you'll see. I go right to my bedroom. I wasn't even going to watch. I just go to my bedroom, and I'm like sitting in my bedroom just going like, my back. And I hear all in the background, surprise, 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 surprise. 45 seconds later, my wife comes into the bedroom, and she's like, okay, what's your story? What's your story? He's here for 3 weeks. What's the story? And in the work I do with people, which, by the way, a shameless plug, is going on starting Sunday in Yerushalayim. I've had almost every seminar I've done, I've got men from Beit Shemesh driving in, or women, but there's a men's seminar, so please check it out. It's online, thepossibleyou.org. And it's going on next week. I did one in Beit Shemesh this year, and please God, I'll plan another, but I don't have anything till probably the winter. Be my first free time. And I had an amazing 3 weeks with my father. Amazing. He caught me by surprise. But you can see your loop coming a mile away. For example, ladies, your husband's coming late. He isn't home yet. He's coming late. You have time. You have time to catch yourself in some kind of loop before he gets home. And I'll give you most important hint of all is a hungry man is an angry man. Okay? Never, ever bring up anything to a man until he's eaten. Nothing. Nothing. Let him walk into the only safe place he has on earth, which is his home. Let him walk in. Let him sit down. Let him eat something. And then tell him whatever it is you got to tell him. But first, let him eat something. Now, other people's stories. Obviously, we want to take responsibility for our own stories, but there's other people's stories as well. And everyone who you're dealing with in your life is in their loop. They're in their loop. And you may be someone who causes their loop. You may be someone who doesn't cause the loop, but you're someone who exacerbates their loop. Why don't you start being someone who recognizes their loop and thinks for a moment outside the loops and says, what's the best approach right now for someone who's caught up inside this loop? We're all in our stories. We all have a little kid with like little kid with like a gun behind our back. A little kid, can't see him. Can't see her. I call her Billy the kid or Billy the kid. And they're just pushing us around all day, getting us to say things. When I tell my dad it's bad timing, am I 48 years old or am I 9? How old? 9. And when my wife is fitness testing me and I interrupt her and make her wrong in the middle of her sentence, am I 48 or am I probably 4 or 5? Trying to get a word in with my older siblings when I was 5 years old. It's just the loop. It's just the loop. And when other people are in their loop, catch yourself. And you know certain people's loops, and you know you're going to be seeing them that day. You have time. You've been given time to plan your interaction beforehand to make sure that you're not bringing out their stuff, and also that you are a safe place for their loop to neutralize. And so they don't have to be in their loop when they're in your presence. Any questions? Okay, a couple questions. We'll start with this nice lady, and then we'll move over there. Yes. The question was, are children already in loops, or is it only adults? So children are very much in their loops. They're really in the heat of their loops, like they're in I'll tell you something beautiful about children, and listen carefully to this. You can re-story children. Children, see, adults have been so caught up in their loop for so many years. And I want to tell you something powerful about this loop, and this is back to the work I do with groups, is you have a vibrational pattern. The whole world's vibrational, if you know physics. For example, this isn't English. This is just wave patterns hitting your eardrum, which is hitting your cerebral cortex, which is translating my vibrations into English. Everything's vibrational. This is vibrational. The table's vibrational. Everything's made of waves. You yourself have your own wave patterns. You have your own wave patterns. Even today in Jerusalem, my skateboard hit an old lady's ankle. I felt so bad. This poor lady. She was coming from physical therapy. I was like, oh, please don't let it be her ankle. And I'm like, what was the physical therapy for? She's like, my shoulder. And I'm like, well, now you got your ankle and your shoulder. And I was like asking her, please forgive me. I asked her like 30 times. By the time we got out of the Maccabi building, she finally was like, I forgive you. And because I didn't want to let her go without getting mechila, so I like really pushed her hard. Just kidding. And there's no other way than my skateboard hitting that lady's ankle. I took responsibility for it, but that skateboard had that lady's ankle written on it. Okay, on the bottom of my skateboard it said that lady's name, and her ankle was right there. Like that skateboard, I had to choose to bring. Like, what is a rabbi like me doing riding a skateboard anyway? You know, like even while I was skateboarding down the street, I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, you have a skateboard to the doctor, and on my way back. I wasn't even touching the skateboard. The skateboard was against the elevator wall, and all of a sudden, phew, and the lady's like, "Oh!" and the skateboard hits her ankle. But I promise you, she drew my skateboard from my house. She already drew it. She drew my skateboard. I can count on one hand in the last 20 years that I rode my skateboard to the doctor's office, or anywhere for that matter. She pulled my skateboard from my house, got me to ride it to the Maccabi building, had me put it just in the elevator on. I'm sure even the guy who waxed the floors of the elevator that made the skateboard perfectly slip off and land and hit her ankle. It was everything's orchestrated in your life. And our wave patterns are what draw everything into us. We're living inside a story. And the story is being validated constantly by everything that happens to us. It is so predictable. And we believe our story so much, we believe it's absolutely true. In fact, we'll pay therapists inordinate amount of money, especially over weeks and months and years, just to hear our story. Just hear our story and just to nod while we tell our story. By the way, I'm all about therapy. Therapy's wonderful, but enough. Like you need to pay someone. I mean, you got to the point where you got to pay someone to hear the story. No one else wants to hear it, so you got to pay somebody to hear the story. By the way, it's wonderful to tell a therapist your story, like up to 3 sessions. But I mean, after that, it's like ridiculous. Unless someone actually has things they need therapy for. But after telling your story a couple times, it boils down to the personal responsibility for our stories. Now, our stories are ground in. That's why I do the work I do, because the vibrational pattern's there. You've got a vibrational pattern. And everyone should know, even though it's ground in and it's been for years and years and years, it does not matter how old you are. You can actually transform your vibrational pattern. Amazing. You can pop out of your story. I had an 86-year-old Rebbitzin come to me to the Possible Use seminar. 86-year-old Rebbitzin, which was amazing to have her. She was the wife of a Rosh Hashiva, who I'll leave nameless. And amazing what happened in there. It's just amazing. And she came with her best friend, also in her 80s, also married to a Gadol. And I'm telling you, that woman became 30 years younger. The other one became 30 years younger. We watched it happen. She transformed her story. She had been living her story. And everyone who lives in her life had to live that story with her. Because you know what? You're like a swimming pool. And the people in your life are swimming in your pool. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to throw a swimming party, please check the water before everyone dives in. Just go through there with that strainer, and just like make sure there's nothing funky floating in your pool, because everyone's going to be swimming in your pool. Children, you can restory. I've restoried several of my children. I do it once a year at least. I restory a child. They'll restory like that. I remember one of my daughters, for example. She came home crying. I was like, "What happened?" She got an F in organization. I don't know if you guys know this. Girls get graded in organization. It's amazing. I never heard of such a thing. But they get, I think it's called takanon. I'm like, what is this Takanon business. And they're like, organization. Like, why are they grading you on organization? There's people who are organized type people, and there are people like me who are like, let it flow. You know, how can you get a grade for your personality? These are factory settings here. So anyway, my daughter's crying about, you know, her organization fail. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're part of the club. And she's like, club? I'm in a club? And I'm like, yeah, you're in the organizationally challenged club. I'm in that club. Bubby's in that club. And I named a few more people in that club. And she's like, really? I'm in a club? And I'm like, she was just a little girl. I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, what do we do in this club? And I'm like, we work really hard to stay organized. And she was like, oh, well, great. That was it. She's been getting like straight A's in organization ever since then. She has to work harder. But she's part of a club. Restoried, boom, just like that. Another time I was teaching in New York and was leaving Motzei Shabbos. And my wife says to me, honey, you are not leaving this house till you have a talk with Shlomke. So I was like, why, what's up with Shlomke? She's like, he's fighting in school. He's fighting with his sisters. He's fighting with me. He's making everybody miserable. And I'm like, you tell me this now? It's Friday. I'm leaving Motzei Shabbos. Like, when am I going to have this talk with Shlomke? And she's like, I don't know, but you're not leaving for New York till you have it. And so we went to Mariv, and I walk home with Shlomke. And we took the really long route home for our 15-minute walk. It was more like the 45-minute walk home, because it took me a half hour to get it out of him, because kids don't talk so much. And by the way, just a little hint for children. This is a mistake psychologists make with their children. That's why children of psychologists are usually crazy. Now, people tell me that I'm great at jokes because I keep a totally straight face. But I realize some of my jokes, I better laugh to make sure people realize that I'm joking. Now, that time I should laugh. What I wanted to share with you is don't force things out of your kids. They'll speak when they're ready. It's like a flower. You can't force a flower to open. You got to wait till it, opens up its petals. Now, anyway, so it took me a half hour to get it out of him. And he finally, I didn't force it out of him, just took him a half hour to feel safe. And finally, Shlomke says it. Everybody hates me. He didn't say it like that. I just was waiting this whole time to do that. He said, everybody hates me. And I look at little Shlomke, and I'm like, yeah, the kid's 9 years old. He's like the most delicious bowl of honey in the world. And I'm looking at a little bowl of honey Shlomke. He's like Winnie the Pooh. And I'm like, what? The last thing in the world I would have expected was that. He says, and it's true, too. And I said, what makes it true? And the kid goes and mentions like 5 random examples where he gets beaten up, picked on, and everything, like wherever he goes. And you brought me to Asia Torah in Los Angeles. Those kids didn't even know me. But within 10 minutes, a kid was beating me up. He smelled me from a mile away. Vibrational patterns. Every interaction we're having is because of our story. I explained to little Shlomke about wave patterns. I said, listen, sweetheart, for him, I didn't go sophisticated. He's 9 years old. So I just went, you are spraying like, you're spraying, everybody hates me. You're spraying, everyone hates you. People have no choice but to bully you. Your sisters have no choice but to fight with you. Mommy has no choice but to fight with you. You're spraying, everyone hates me. That's your loop. That's your wave pattern. That's your story. So I don't care what happened in LA at HLA, and I don't care what happens at school with the bully. You got to own your story, kid. And I want you to know something, that you are the most lovable, delicious bowl of honey in the world. You're Winnie the Pooh, and we all love you. And he says, not going to work. And I said, listen, this is what you're going to do. We're going to walk for 15 more minutes, and all you're going to say for 15 minutes, again, you can restory a kid. Don't try this at home. But I said, for the next 15 minutes, all you're going to do is just say, I'm loved. For 15 minutes. I'm loved, I'm lovable, everyone loves me, I'm loved, I'm lovable, I'm lovable, everyone loves me, I'm loved, I'm lovable, lovable. And I was just going next to him, I was walking next to him, spray it, just spray it. I kid you not, at our Shabbos table, I'm sitting at the Shabbos table, singing Zmiros. I end a Zemer, my son Avrami got up to bring some food from the kitchen, he loves to help, and my daughter Adina comes and sits right in his spot, and Shlomka's on my left, and Adina, doesn't usually have such a kind word for Shlomka, and Adina goes like this. I kid you not. She says, "You are the most delicious, scrumptious, unbelievable, sweetest, delicious kid in the world. I'm gonna eat you up." And Shlomka's like, looks at me, I'm like, and I go, and that was the end of it. That was the end of it. He never had another fight at school. The bullies looked the other way. They found someone else with the good bully me wavelength. There's always a second best. They found another guy to bully. And the kids at home, other than, normal fighting, I mean, kids are kids. He still fights with the kids, but it's nothing like before. And the interaction with my wife's more or less normative. Amazing. Ever since then. Amazing. Responsibility for our stories. So regarding your question, I'm so glad you asked that question because it's right on our topic, is you can re-story your children and re-story them. Every one of you, when you go home tonight, I want you to think about it. When you're laying in bed, just think about each of your kids. Think about what their stories probably are at this point. And re-story them right away. If you've got one girl who's particularly glamorous and another girl who, is just not, I promise you there's a story there. And you re-story them. And Shabbos, third meal, I already spoke about how the best of characters, the best people you'll ever meet are the people who didn't have it easy in some other way. They're always the best people. And in the end, when you're married and you're living your life, because what happens is the girl who feels less glamorous, she feels like she's not going to marry the greatest guy. And the funny thing is after marriage, within a few weeks, how you look becomes so irrelevant. It all becomes who you are inside. And it's the people who build themselves. And so you can re-story a kid. You're not going to be able to convince a kid she's as pretty as her sister. But you can re-story her and tell her that you got the real stuff. You got the real stuff inside. And just build her from there. And what's better? Obviously the panemius, the inside's the place to build a child. You build them from within. Someone had a question over there by the men? Hit it.
How do you really identify? Some of them are very, very deep, right? Some of these things, you might know your father is this way or your mother, but there's a lot of stories each person has, right? So how do you go about identifying those in yourself? You mentioned the kids, but in your own.
Yeah, amazing question. Of all your deeper stories, like we all have stories that the obvious ones that come up, stories that came from our family, our upbringing, our sibling orders, trauma, anything that happened. Those stories are quite obvious that we got to work through. And in the seminar work, those are the ones we generally work through. But how do you get to your deeper stories? So the way I do it is like this. In life, you want to be in the zone, right? We all want to be in the zone. That means you're like all pistons pumping, you're feeling good, everything's cruising, you got the wind in your sails. That's the way we all want our lives to be. So what I do, I'll just tell you what I do. I monitor that feeling of being in the zone. I just monitor that feeling. And that's my zone. And I give it a good solid anchor, like really in my zone, wind in the sails, cruising. Now, what's good about really marking your zone is if you ever get out of your zone, if you fall out of your zone, it stands out like a sore thumb. If you're out of your zone, you'll realize it immediately because you're so anchored in, you're so locked in to your zone that anything that takes you out of the zone, boom, you immediately catch it. Today I fell out of my zone. I caught it. It was amazing. It was like, okay, out of my zone. What's going on? And if you fall out of your zone, I promise you, you're in a loop. If you fall out of the zone, someone, tickled the spot. Someone like triggered you. Some situation triggered you. A situation you're going to be dealing with triggered you. Something triggered you. Anytime you find yourself out of that zone. But the problem is we all got to lock in the zone to begin with. So tomorrow, for example, start your day in the zone. Say your Modeh Ani Lefanecha. Be in your zone. Mark it. Anchor it. Grab it. You're in the zone. Now watch your day carefully. Anything pulling you out of your zone, it's because one of your loops got triggered. Once you've identified that loop, then there's a 4-step process, which I'm not going into now, of owning that story. You own your story, and you bust out of it. And for all of us, and we're not going to go into how you do it, but the actual details of how you do it. But the main thing is just recognizing the story and taking responsibility for that story. That's like the bigadol. Okay. So, does anyone else have a question? Yes.
I'm just curious. Do you feed your kids sugar?
The question is, do I feed my kids sugar?
And what's your opinion about people feeding their kids sugar and what it does to their body?
So we are not big on sugar at all. We do use demura sugar in baking, and we use demura sugar in our coffee, meaning I do. And so we're not big on sugar at all with our children. We also, at our Shabbos table, we have grape juice fizzies. You know what grape juice fizzies are? Seltzer with grape juice. No, we don't even use the fruit drinks, which are primarily sugar. We just have grape juice fizzies. If you have a young family, you can do this. Just get all the colas and the 7-Ups and all those fruit drinks, the pre-got boxes which are a little better than the spring bottles, but just get that stuff off your table and get your kids into grape juice fizzies. You buy a bunch of it, meaning a 6-pack of soda. I suggest soda Tempo. Tempo soda actually keeps its bubbles, which is very good. You can open it like 10 hours later and it's still there. No other soda company, I'm not going to mention names for Lashon Hara purposes, but no one else can handle that one. And then just grape juice, Israeli grape juice, doesn't taste as good with the American, tart stuff, that Welch, whatever you call that stuff, the Kedem stuff. No offense to Kedem, obviously. But the grape juice fizzies, and it's plenty of sugar, but at least it's 100% grape juice with the soda. We stay away from it. It could be that's making your kids get all whacked out, the sugar stuff.
How would you take kids that are on?
So it's really hard. We made the mistake. We went fruit juice for a while, and we backed off, and our teenagers are ready to kill us. Our teenagers are like in full merit right now over this. They're totally upset. But at this point, we've been ignoring them in deference to their younger siblings. The truth is, adults aren't as big a problem, so it really isn't that big a problem for our teens. But it's the kids we're trying to protect. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about when you went to fitness testing you.
Yes.
Just breathe and then repeat that.
Yeah.
What if that doesn't work?
You haven't tried it. I can tell by your asking me.
No, I'm serious. Sometimes women doesn't want to just be told back what they've said. They want you to actually change. They want you to do something different. So no, ask women.
Oh, you mean after everything she said about what you should be doing? If you should be doing it, you should do it. Some of the stuff is random, and some of the stuff is stuff you should be integrating. I wasn't saying not to integrate what they said. If you need to integrate something, integrate it. If you have a shaila, whether you need to integrate it, go speak to your Rav. That's what we have Rabbeim for. You go speak to your Rav, you say, my wife keeps mentioning this particular thing. Is it something I need to be dealing with? You go speak to him. I speak. If my wife's mentioning something repeatedly about, one of my behaviors, so I go to the Rav. I say, is this needed tikkun? Yeah, for sure. Oh, you thought I meant just listen and move on? No, I was saying her feelings will move on. You have to integrate if it's something you need to integrate. Okay, but I speak to you speak to your Rav. How do you know what? How do you know you've integrated it? She won't mention it anymore. Okay, last thing.
One question on your seminar.
Yes, sir.
So you're saying that someone who goes to your seminar won't be able to break out of loops that they've stuck into. And it could be any. But does it only last for a certain as long as you're in the seminar? Afterwards you can go right.
No, it's different than most seminars in that it actually gets stronger over time. No, when you break out, it actually gets stronger. In fact, you get to the point where it's like, it becomes like a makolet. Like, imagine like you found out your makolet was like ripping you off because your wife keeps sliding the credit card or something, and they're like adding zeros to your bills. So like finally your bank calls you and like, have you ever heard of Osher Odd? Because there's no reason you should be spending 20,000 shekels a month in your local makolet. And you're like, huh? So you obviously are you ever going to go back to that makolet? Once. Once when you go wring the guy's neck. But are you ever going back there again? You're never going back there again. So there's something amazing that happens. What's your name? Daniel, there's something amazing happens is when you actually go into the loop, it's pretty painful, but we go in there. When you go into your loop deeply, you go through a very intense experience. You get in the pool. You also start, we do a whole thing. It's deeply meditative. It's pitch black, so no one sees how much you're crying. And what happens is you bring in everyone into your pool who's in your pool with you. And it's extremely emotional. Normally I just kind of let people go into this, but in Mexico City, you know what I said? I said, forget this. I'm just not going to wait. I went to, they didn't know what they're getting into. You're in a seminar, so you don't know what's next. So I went around with a box of tissue. I went to every participant. I had a women's seminar by day, men at night. To every participant, I just went with a wad of tissues. I'm like, to every participant in the room, like 20 ladies, all around. At night, I did it with the men. And they're like, what's this for? And I'm like, you'll see. Pitch black, music starts. And anyway, but what happens is when you get in touch with your loop, but like really in there, what happens is it becomes the makolet you don't shop in. It just becomes the makolet you don't shop in. You shop in other loops because you haven't found them yet. But that loop, you don't go there anymore. You just don't go there because it costs too much. You pay too dearly, and the people who love you are paying too much. They did not sign up for that loop. And so when you get in there deep, as we will in the work, you can't go back there. Now, there are people who can send you back. I already told the story of my father bringing the leader of the program back. He brought me right back. There are times that you'll fall back in your loop, but as I said to the answer before, I forget who asked me, because you've marked the zone, like this is my zone, you catch yourself out of loop real quick, and you're able to get right back on your horse. You may not get back on it immediately. It may be at the end of the evening, and you blew it at dinner. But you'll get right back because you've anchored your zone. Is that clear? And that's the possible you, is anchoring that zone. Okay, it's amazing. I mean, I'd really say, you'd be like, oh, I'll wait till I'll do it, then maybe this winter in Beit Shemesh. I haven't scheduled one, but if I did, just get it done. It's amazing. Just get it done for your summer. I just had a kid change his flight just now to do it next week. Why is he changing his flight? Because his parents are sending him to tour Europe for this whole summer. And he's like, I want to tour Europe from those eyes. I don't want to tour Europe from my loop. I want to tour Europe from the fresh eyes of really being clear and then going to tour Europe. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it was amazing to be here. I love, 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 love RBS. It was great to be here. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you. And may I give you a bracha. I'm a chassid. Chassidim always end the Devar Torah with a bracha. May I give you a bracha, first of all, to have tremendous hatzlacha in your commitment to being in Eretz Yisrael. You should all be here forever and ever. And may you also have a bracha to have deep understanding of your loop, other people's loops, so that you're able to take full responsibility for how you're interacting, so that you're having only positive, loving, and connective interactions. May you be blessed. Say amen. May you be blessed to be committed people who are not in that very vulnerable decision mode, which is always given to reasons, but to be in the commitment mode, which brings siyata deshmaya and stability in your relationships. May you always be in that commitment mode. Amen. And may you all be blessed to be the greatest parents, the greatest spouses, and may we all be blessed to see all of Am Yisrael here in Eretz Yisrael, healthy and in a peaceful land with Mashiach Tzidkenu Beis HaMikdash B'mehera V'yameinu. Amen.